So, Labor Day weekend is here. Let's talk about it. European markets actually open today, so a lot of stuff coming out of there. We have the Russians shutting down the gas, pretty much collapsing European markets. Turkey is now at 80% inflation. You thought you had inflation problems? Woo! Biden's debt forgiveness plan. The costs are coming out, and the costs are insane, and it is inflationary. So if you like this song, it's by a band called Full Trunk, and the song is called Let's Go. Woo! Actually, fire song. I like it a lot. Might use again. Anyways, let's talk about what happened. So first of all, we have to start with the European markets because this shit is out of whack. Now look, what happened on Friday was something very interesting. So basically, on Friday, the G7, which is pretty much, the guys who called the shot on the western side of the map, basically decided to call out Russia and say, hey, we're not going to let you profit from this situation. So we're going to cap Russian oil. So nobody will pay more than what we agree on, and we're not going to let you squeeze us. Pretty much the reverse of a cartel. Basically, the same days, hours later, Gazprom, which is the provider of natural gas to Europe through Nord Stream, found a technical malfunction in the pipe. A coincidence. And they shut down the supply of gas to Europe indefinitely until they figure out what this magical malfunction is. Now look, obviously everybody knows what's going on. They poked Russia, Russia pulled back, and I think the winter is going to be much more scary. At this point, they're playing these games to see who has the bigger banana. But come wintertime, people's lives are going to be at stake because wintertime in Europe is freaking dangerous, and this is a very dangerous game. Now look, nobody has any doubt what's actually going on here. Gazprom is pretty much a shell company. It's owned, it's run, it's managed by the Kremlin. Everything Gazprom does is decided directly by the Kremlin. So make no mistakes about it. It's a very calculated move. Now, obviously, I think the winter is going to be very tough. There's no mistake here that Putin is using this weapon right now. He's signaling. He's telling them, hey, I'm not afraid to use this to actually hurt you. But as I mentioned, there is a silver lining. And what is it? Well, look, for years and years, the Europeans have opted in into the whole Gerhard Schröder, Angela Merkel from Germany basically saying Russia will be our friend, they will take care of us, we can fully rely on Russia, they'll never screw with us. Now Russia has pretty much shown its cards, and in this conflict they've shown Europe they're going to leverage their supply of gas to push and pressure Europe no matter how many people will suffer. So at this point Russia becomes unserviceable as a partner because at the first sign of conflict Russia shuts down the pipeline. You saw that happen. So at this point the Europeans have been basically proven wrong with this theory where they literally cannot trust Russia. So this pushes a whole new plan into motion, which is finding alternative means of energy, natural gas, oil to diversify out of Russia, which is something they've been really, I would say not reluctant to do, but very slow to do to this point. So this actually pushes Europe into this whole transition out of Russia into alternative sources. The bad news, it's probably going to take a couple of years, 3 to 4 to 5 years to actually get it done because there's a lot of logistical issues involved in this. So we're looking at a very tough few years, but finally Europe is going to get out of the Russian thumb, which is good news, I guess, if you're looking for any in this story. Now, some crazy shit happening in New York. So in New York, in Tribeca, there's a very famous skyscraper. It's called the Jenga building, believe it or not. And it was the house or the home of the now former CFO of Bed Bath & Beyond. Now, this guy, his credentials is phenomenal. He's a very seasoned, experienced CFO, 52 years old. And according to police reports, he plunged to his death from his apartment. Look, I'm not going to make jokes about it. This isn't funny. This is actually very, very sad. And while there's a lot of people who are going to be talking about the fact that this is the beginning of 2000, 2008, because we had a lot of these incidents happen in the previous bear markets in 2000, 2008, I don't know if that's the case or not. Now, look, I have no idea what kind of real life shit this guy was dealing with. This is a sad story. I don't know what his personal situation is, and I'm not going to speculate here. If I look at the company Bed Bath & Beyond strictly as a company, I'm going to tell you straight up, being the CFO of that company probably wasn't fun. The company's in deep shit. They're in doo-doo. They're closing 150 stores. They're firing employees. That must have added to the pressure, but I honestly don't know, and I'm not going to speculate on this man's personal life. And now let's move on to our favorite Egyptian and the guy with the best mustache on TV, hands down, and probably the best we've seen on TV since Tom Selleck. Comment below if you're old enough who has the better mustache, Tom Selleck or Mohamed El-Erian. the shave thing in Friends. I think he shaved it in Friends. I don't know. Who cares? Let's move on. So Mohamed El-Erian, accomplished guy, president of Queen's College in London. He's an advisor to Allianz. He's probably one of the most legit guys on TV. One of the few that actually knows what they're talking about. Usually, however, El-Erian doesn't tend to give out a lot of information. He's there to kind of promote his brand, but he's very careful with actually giving advice. He's very general. He's very amorphic. This time, he said something very uncharacteristic, very atypical, saying, hey, get out of these irrational markets. Shit are about to hit the fan. Now, he was talking about sovereign bonds, not equities, but he said that he's not optimistic about the market and it's not a good time to be in it. Now, again, if Mohamed El-Erian is saying this and he's not the sort of guy to actually tell you to do one thing or the other, you can pretty much understand how pessimistic he is about the market to be that certain. Now, again, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball. Neither does Mohamed El-Erian. At the end of the day, this is just a YouTube video. It is just my opinion. Might be inaccurate. Might be completely wrong. Might be the ramblings of a madman. As always, don't click nothing, don't buy nothing, don't smash nothing. Let's move on. And now let's move on to Turkey. And if you thought you had inflation problems in the US or UK, Turkey just crossed 80% inflation. 80% inflation. Whew. That's insane. Now, this is pretty much a prime example of what cheap money can do to you unless you have the dollar, which is America. Anywhere else but America, cheap money will lead to this. Now, in Turkey, there's one guy who calls the shots, similar to Putin. His name is Erdogan, and he basically believes in cheap money, and this is the result. Now, what's crazy about it, that the Turkish Fed is still going on TV and giving the whole, this is transitory speech that John Paul was giving last year. They're still sticking to that, the whole thing that this is transitory, and check this out, they're blaming Russia for the 80% inflation. Now, this should be a warning sign. What happens when you absolutely ignore inflation? And I think it should be a warning sign for the Fed. Now, I don't think America can structurally go to 80% inflation. America cannot hyperinflate because they own the US dollar, which is the world's reserve currency. There's a whole story behind that. Let's not get into it in this video. But America can experience tougher inflation and destructive inflation. And Turkey is a warning sign for everybody to take inflation seriously. And let's talk about the final story of the day. The debt forgiveness initiative by Biden have never been discussed fully as far as how much it's going to cost the public. And now some smart people, some smarty pants out of Pans-Wharton, I don't know why it's funny. They've calculated to about $1 trillion. Now, get this. Now, a lot of people have been saying that this is not inflationary because people are not going to be getting cash, which is true. But here's the problem. If the government is going to lose anywhere close to $1 trillion in income, which I don't think it will, it's probably half that or even, let's say, 1/4 of that. Let's say $300 billion in income that the government is not going to get right now because the government is supposed to get that money, which is effectively just forgave, or at least trying to forgive. So if the government now doesn't have, let's say, $300 to $400 billion, let's be cautious, of income, which it just forgave, what's going to happen? It will need to print more money because they still have to pay for infrastructure, healthcare, R&D, education. Somebody has to pay for this shit. We only make $4 trillion a year out of taxes. So if we just gave up $400 billion of debt, that means that money has to be printed. That means that we're back to square one. Spending money to get rid of inflation just to see inflation go back up again. Now, I don't know who's running the show, but at this point, it just seems like, what were you thinking? Come on. Is this really the best time to forgive debt? Now, I understand people who went to school and who have trouble with this debt, and I get what you're saying. I understand how tough life can be. I understand everything. The students shouldn't be the one who paying this, but is this really the right time to take away anywhere from $300 to $400 to $500 billion out of our budget for that in inflationary times? That's a question I'm going to leave to you guys, the audience, and I'm happy to hear your comments below. As always, don't click nothing, don't smash nothing, don't buy nothing. See you next video. Enjoy Labor Day weekend.